lightning like Steve McQueen. I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better push yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Morning Show, the top morning show in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines and, most importantly, provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. Anybody who shows up on this show, as well as my twice-a-week long-form podcast, is a transportation professional. That's right. I am only bringing people on here who have done what you're looking to do, or who are currently doing what you're trying to do as well, so we can provide the right information that you can apply, utilize, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. It's one of the many reasons why I proudly fly this American flag behind me every single day. A, we're the greatest nation on earth, but B, I'm living my American dream, and I want to help each and every one of you guys live yours as well. I got a very special guest for you guys today. I'm going to bring him on here in a second. We're going to talk about mergers and acquisitions. We're going to talk about some of the recent headlines that have came out here and kind of like what to expect and what to plan for and what all of this information really means. But before we do that, I got to give a shout out to my friends over at VHub. You guys, vhubapp.com. Whether you're a broker, carrier, or a shipper, we all need access to trailers at some point in time. And the best part about it, especially with rates being what they are, you guys get paid to move these trailers. That's right. That's on top of the revenue that you can get by loading these trailers out. So what they're working on right now, they got West Valley City, Utah, going up to Calgary, Alberta, and you get $15.50 US to move that. And now this is where I'm really excited about this, you guys, because as you're prospecting right now in any freight market, but especially right now, how do you stand out in a crowd? Being able to offer a drop trailer situation or a solution to an enterprise level shipper, you have that capability now, because they have 150 drive-ins in Paragould, Arkansas, needing to go up to Mississauga, Ontario, and you get 1,000 Canadian per trailer. But the thing is you don't need to just find a shipper here that needs to go up into Toronto. You can go over to somewhere in Nashville, drop them there, and deliver them up into the Toronto area. They just have to be back into Mississauga in a certain allotment time. And then they have 200 trailers over in Stoughton, Wisconsin, needing to get over to Milton, Ontario. Same thing, 1,000 Canadian to do that. And then finally, they have Paragould, Arkansas, going to Irving, Texas, and you get $550 US to move that. So hit them up, you guys, vhubapp.com. My man Xavier Campos and Stacey Steen, they'll be in the audience. Just do me a favor, let them know that the Freight Coach sent you. All right, I'm going to bring my guest up right now. The man, the myth, the legend, Shannon Graham. Dude, that view. Like that view, I've been in Canada's office. That doesn't get
What's up, Chris? I'm having a hard time hearing you, brother, to start it off.
Oh, you can't. Can you hear me at all?
There you go. You just jumped out for a hot minute.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I was going to say the view behind you doesn't give it justice for how amazing that is. Like, and that's panoramic too, dude. You guys have that in every angle in that office.
It's been special since moving into the new office. We moved about 5-6 months ago and really enjoyed it. And you're right. Being a Phoenix guy, growing up here for the last 30 years, depending on which area of the valley you want to look at, just come up and walk around. It's pretty cool.
Dude, like, how has that transition been? Like, going from starting when you did to like where you are right now, dude, that's got to be fantastic. Like, that's got to be the greatest feeling ever.
You know, it's kind of funny you say that, because I traveled this weekend, got to go with a buddy to Monterey, California for the first time.
Yeah.
I don't share that as a brag. I share that to say this. Like, I have videos on my phone where 2 years prior, you know, I was on a vacation and trying to figure out where this thing was going and, you know, trying to build the business, and a lot more questions than answers. There's still a ton of questions, right, Chris? But at that point in time, you know, you get a lot of disappointment, a lot of heartache. And a friend of mine suggested I start doing kind of like a video log. So I was in Monterey, but watching this video of me 2 years prior, talking about some of the struggles and the challenges and waking up and getting after it. So a little bit surreal for myself to see where we've come in 2 years. To your point, it's try to stay very humble and hungry in this journey, but wild what you can accomplish in 2 years, right? Because in life, you're like, man, these years just fly by. And then, you know, sometimes when you sit back and take inventory, it's pretty special what you can do really a testament to this team, honestly, and that we've assembled here, and all the supporters that we've had throughout the country, including yourself, who've been nothing but great to us along the way. So,
but dude, like, I think like what you're talking about right there, like, I want to see more content on that, like talking about the realities of this stuff, because like not everybody gets, VC backing. Not everybody gets a blank check. Some of us are going to bootstrap it. And one of the favorite lines, so Shannon and I text, we'll talk and stuff like that, was, I remember one time he said, like, oh, I think we'll pull up the couch cushions and find a couple extra pennies to make that happen. And I'm just like, dude, but it's so true, because it's like, if you go out all over social media, it's one of two things. It's the fucking world is on fire, or it's I'm the greatest thing to ever walk the earth. And very few people take the approach of the realities of what it takes to get to certain levels. And, I'm trying to do that in my journey as well, about posting, like, dude, 3 years ago, I was in my bedroom, now in the next 15 or next 3 weeks, dude, I'm going to be moving into like a building that I never thought was fucking possible when I first started. And being able to see that progression and everything, man, like that's the stuff that excites me, because it's like, I know what you guys go through and I know what other people go through out there, because I'm going through it as well. And what you said was very powerful, man. Like, we never have it all figured out, like you just keep fucking showing up. Like, and it is that simple, is you just got to keep showing up and keep figuring it out.
Yeah, I'll have to send you the video, but literally that's the thing. Like, a lot of heartache, a lot of disappointment on a Saturday. And I did this video a couple of years ago, and I was like, hey, but we get up tomorrow and we grind, right? We get up tomorrow and we go back to work. Not that you can't be sad or disappointed, get a little bit down, but I think it's not about that experience. It's like what we always talk about. It's how you bounce back, right? And it's what you do the next day. And do you get back up and you bring that fire? That's what this, industry will teach you. That's what life will teach you. And, I think it's a testament to, like I said, this group. It's not roses and rainbows. It's incredibly challenging, like it is for many out there.
Yeah.
And I think, really being grounded in that is important, right? Because if you deny that experience, then I think you're missing it. Or if you spend all your time marketing around it, pretending like it's perfect, you're creating a facade. And honestly, for us, that's just not stylistically what we do. You don't see us post about numbers and logos and this stuff. Like, that's just not important to us. Like, we know we're on a long-term hike here, and this is going to be a really tough time, period. But we've got, like I said, we've got the team, we've got the support staff, we've got the customer support, carrier support. So we believe that we can kind of carry this through, and that's our intention. And so we're in a good spot compared to some. But you don't see us talking about, lighting the world on fire, being a unicorn, or any of that stuff. Doesn't really matter to us at this point. So
I'm right there with you, man. Like, I look at it like this, talking about numbers and everything. Like, I just feel like anybody can fill out anything to make it look in a certain type of way. And I feel like because not like I'm about celebrating wins, right? Like, hey, if you had a record month, yeah, you should fucking brag about that, because it's a lot to get up there. But if you're just like, oh, I just started doing this, 20 days ago, and look at where I'm at now and everything, yada, yada. Like, that's such a turnoff to me, because it's like, what are you doing this for? What's your content geared? Are you looking for self-serving information, or are you looking to actually make a change out there in a lot of your stuff? And yeah, man, dude, we could go on and on about that. I got to get some shout outs here quick, and then we're going to get into the topic at hand of mergers here. Tracy O. St. Clair, what is up? She's watching over on YouTube. Sunny Sharma, good morning. Orange Shirt Gang. Zach Williams, good morning. He's with SPI Logistics. You guys hit him up if you want to become a freight agent. Dan Penrod says it's a green screen, but he does says happy Monday. Oh, Dan, you are not all of us live in Tampa, man. Yeah. John Radvansky, good morning. Patrick Provance says, that's where I am in my journey. Just keep showing up and putting in effort. Patrick, it's the truth, man. It really is when you focus on the macro all the time about where you're not, you lose sight about what it's going to take to really get there. And, it's like, honestly, and I've been talking about this recently as the market shifted and everything, and where your focus should be. And I'll always attribute it back to like when I first started out, man, was looking at my calendar and it was blank. I had like one thing at 8 a.m. and then another thing at 3. And it's like, how do I fill in? And it's like, all right, well, how do I focus on winning the next hour? And that's like where, and that process to me is so key. How do I focus on winning the next hour? What can I put my efforts into, and what can I do to ensure that I'm being productive with my time? But dude, let's talk about some big M&A news that came out last week. I was, because we had talked last week, and to me I wasn't shocked at the transaction itself, but it's weird when you see a big carrier acquire another big carrier like that, because it's not like it's a multi-billion-dollar one going after 100 million. Like, this one is a multi-billion-dollar one as well. So it's like, from your perspective, like, what's the appeal of that? Like, why would the Knight-Swift go after the U.S. Express?
Yeah, well, look, I think depending on what kind of business books you identify with, the reason why $1 billion, multi-billion-dollar, let's call it $7-8 billion company is not going to go acquire $100 million company, it just doesn't move the needle, Chris. Right? Yeah. Like, to be honest with you, that's a rounding error. And then honestly, you see how much work goes into a merger and an acquisition, right? Behind the scenes, the lead up, a deal like that takes 6, 9, 10 months to put together. So you have all the cost and all the time. So whether you're doing a $300 million deal, or in this case, an $800 million deal, what a lot of people that get involved in mergers and acquisitions, and we've realized in our time here, is a lot of the work is the same, right? So if you're going to do that much work, and if you're a bigger company, you need to get the bang for the buck. So you're going to go bigger, which then kind of rolls a different type of stone down the hill, which is you're going to see consolidation, but you're not going to see people spending a lot of effort to go roll up 30, 50, $80 million trucking companies if they're multi-billion. They're going to want to find the biggest opportunity. It's just a leverage game, right? The bigger you bet, the bigger you win, right? Yeah, so, sure. This is a big bet by that outfit. You saw them make that big bet in 2017, albeit a very different type of transaction from the KNX, from the Knight-Swift one in 2017. But that being said, it's a big bet. It's got a lot of leverage, a lot of upside. And so I think it can be a win-win. And from a market perspective, it continues to change the dynamic of U.S. trucking, right? I think when I say that, where, a lot of people, I've seen these things over the last week talking about monopoly. Yeah. And I think that's funny because for everybody that's been in the space a long time, you watch like the LTL carriers, the number of major LTL carriers compared to over-the-road trucking is completely different, and no one screams monopoly when we're talking about some of the largest LTL carriers. So the fragmentation in the truckload sector is so much different. So I think that is a silly argument. I think where it does play out, and where I'm very interested to see, is just optionality and diversity, and specifically with the customers in their portfolios. Meaning, if you already are big with a KNX prior, and you had a big wallet share, let's say with a USX, how many eggs are you going to put into one basket as a particular shipper when they start thinking about their portfolio and diversification and leverage, when that comes to bear? And so that's really how I think it plays out more. The word monopoly, I think that's a far stretch and pretty ridiculous argument. I don't see that at all, but that's my thoughts.
I don't think that there'll ever be a monopoly. Otherwise, there would have been by now. Like, in all reality, Shannon, like, how come? It's like, when you say these numbers, it's kind of silly to say, but it's like a C.H. Robinson, the largest freight broker in North America, is only at $15 billion a year compared to the overall market, which sits close to $1 trillion, right? So they have less than a 1% market share, which is fucking ridiculous to put that into perspective to say. But like, why isn't there 2 or 3 players that control 30 or 40% of the market? And to me, it's like, because there's no real value add to a lot of the larger shippers of, if, like, topic at hand is Knight-Swift here, for example, there's no real value to give them 30% of their freight under any circumstances at all. So it's like, comparatively speaking, like, I think it's like 94% of the freight that's moved on the road is 20 trucks or less operations. So if you rolled up the top 100 trucking companies, they still don't control 6% of the domestic U.S. truckload.
Yeah, and what's interesting, right? You look at the bid tools, right? The companies that run the bid tools, these large institutional shippers, they have programs that really talking about diversity, they almost build it in, right? They're only going to give a certain amount. They want to spread it out regionally. They want that. So I think that'll be the more interesting play here for people that, like I said, have a large wallet share with one, and then you add a very large 7,000 truck carrier. How does that matriculate its way through a bid tool? Meaning, are they going to look at that as truly differentiated? I would tell you from the KNX perspective, a lot of folks kind of blended it, said, okay, so I get it. You're still red and blue, but look, there's only so many eggs I'm going to put in that basket. I'm going to look for other options. It bodes well for other participants that are looking to grow into the market, looking to grow into new shipper acquisition, but I think shippers will continue to look for new solutions, specifically ones with equipment that can scale with them and handle some of their, drop and hook needs, much like you talked about on your intro to the show. So I think that'll be an interesting thing that plays out over the next few years of what shippers look for diversifying their portfolios even more. And the big companies will continue to look for large acquisitions. And so the optionality at the large shipper, large carrier level continues to get constrained. It's going to be an interesting time to be in transportation.
So with what you're saying there, man, like where do you see the industry really trending? Because I think like over these last couple of years, obviously, just as well as I do, it's just been the digital trend, right? Like everything's digital. But I've found that the old school ground and pound mentality is still appreciated by the overwhelming majority of customers out there. Because, again, I think that with the amount of people that are out there trying to offer a service and everything, there's a very large difference between somebody who actually knows what they're selling as opposed to somebody who's just like reading off of a script. And, because again, like in my brokerage, man, like, dude, like I don't mention anything other than, hey, this is me. This is what I specialize in. This is what I know your product. And that's really kind of like that's what I do to get in the door and get a conversation with them. Yes, I'm a lot more in depth when I'm talking to them about their distribution network, about their overall products and everything else. And is it a rental? Is it a purchase? Is it a, transfer? How does this all go? But I think like at the end of the day, man, like you can offer everything under the sun, but like nothing's ever going to change about trucking, right? Like it's going to pick up at point A and it's going to deliver to point B. Like you can't change that.
Well, yeah, I think there are those staples that you talked about, right? You call it ground and pound. You're a little bit grittier, but I call it just, still people in the relationships, right? Yeah. And I think for 5-6 years, this industry has gravitated towards the digital marketing, the VC dollars, the democratization of freight, the AI, everything was going to change the game. I think you've seen people with plenty of capital. You mentioned one earlier in the show, right? More capital than anybody. They've also shown an inability to really lower the impetus on how many people they need to run their operation behind the digital and technical platforms they deliver, right? Really, truly offering the ability to scale down their workforce. That really hasn't happened, even for people that are well funded or have the profits in the bank. And so, you've seen now the cool down in the employee counts for some of these companies, right? I think they realize the cash burn is too high. And I think we've blended two different things in the industry too over 5 years, Chris. I think we've talked about the digitization, which is obviously great. Where do we add efficiencies in that? Yeah. But the part that goes unspoken that everybody realizes, especially if you follow some of the finances and the publicly traded ones, is are you truly optimizing and digitizing it for efficiency, or are you using that to raise the money and then offsetting the losses on the freight that you're running?
Yeah.
Right. And I think when you have a loss leader, when your core business product is a loss leader, meaning I'm getting, let's call it $1,000, but I'm paying carriers $1,200 to run them. That model doesn't really work, and it doesn't work at scale. And I think what you're seeing in this world is the convergence of the marketing, the digitization, with the fact that as the money in the capital markets dry up, that convergence of those two is the pain that you're seeing. Is the culling down of workforces, is this new kind of normalization of what freight is? And I go back to what you said. Like I said, I don't call it ground and pound, but what I think where we separate ourselves apart is just the personality, the human element, giving a crap about what we do, understanding our shippers, answering the phone, being very responsive. Like that human element has been a key differentiator for us, and we continue to kind of deploy that. And you don't hear us talk about, some of the tech we're building, which obviously helps us. But the real driving factor of why we have customers and why we grow customers is we are easy to do business with, and that sets us apart.
Yeah. And dude, I think a lot of it boils down to, does the customer know how much you care? Right. Like, I think like, yeah, I use the ground and pound analogy on a lot of things, but I'm right there with you, man. Cause it is about that customer loyalty to me. I know how hard it is to build a business, right? Like, I know how challenging it is to onboard a shipper who's willing to give you access to millions of dollars worth of freight, right? I don't take that lightly. Like, customers aren't replaceable to me. Like, to me, customer retention is everything, and working with people, to your point, that long-standing relationship. And it is through when the highs are high and the lows are low. They need to know that you're there to fight with them in those moments, to problem solve. And, again, you can't out market incompetence, right? Like, I think that that's what some things have been proven over these last couple of years is you could have a phenomenal marketing team, but if your team's incompetent behind the scenes trying to operate this stuff, because again, it's easy to cover freight if you don't care about making money, right? Like, fuck, I mean, how much easier would our lives be, Shannon, if we could just be like, quote the customer 1,000 and pay 2,000? Who gives a shit? It's somebody else's money. But eventually your number is going to get called. Eventually it becomes a problem, because if you can't actually effectively navigate through anything technology, there's only so many buzzwords before like people are like, all right, dude, you're like, enough's enough. Like, you got to stop, right? Like, you clearly don't know how many wheels are on an 18-wheeler, and stuff like that. So it's like, for me, it's always like those little soft skills. And I think now in this market more than ever, man, people just need to know that you know what you're talking about, right? Like, they need to know that you can execute on it and not throw some fancy buzzwords at them, because I think the buzzwords are overplayed. I think a lot of that stuff is way overplayed. And I personally feel my gut is telling me it's going to go back to, can you actually move this stuff? Do you know what you're doing? And if you can do that, I think you're going to be just fine. I think those are where the biggest growth opportunities for a lot of brokers is the ones who are leveraging technology as like a value add, but who are also that old school, hey, we get the industry. We're from the industry. We've just developed some tech on top of it to streamline some of the redundancies that were in all of our days.
Yeah, you get paid for the execution in this business, right? People are paying you to execute on the freight. And you're right. Like, a lot of those words and buzzwords, when they don't land on the shipper's shores, like, what they're really looking at is, hey, did you execute? Do you make, they've got 50, 60, 80. Some of our partners have 140 different people they're managing, right? Like, the best thing you can do, it's kind of like a lineman in football, right? Like, you don't know their name, which is kind of weird to say, because everybody wants to be really proud. Like, no, I'm the high profile person. But honestly, if you can act more like a lineman, right? Like, how many offensive linemen? They're probably the most critical people on a football field.
Yeah.
And most people would have a hard time naming the 5 offensive linemen that play for their best college or sport NFL team.
Yeah. Dude,
but the most critical people on the field, because they just keep their head down, they do their job. And without them, the whole thing doesn't work. And so from a mentality perspective, I think figuring out how to act like an offensive lineman for your shippers, you're not showing up on the scorecard. You don't have the issues. You don't have the claims. You don't have the fall offs. You don't have the billing mistakes. You just go in and you do your job like that over multiple cycles is what gets rewarded. And so I think it's different than being maybe the most boisterous, top signed, wide receiver that always wants the ball. You add value also to the company, but I think what a lot of shippers are looking for is those really key linemen to be on their team with them.
Dude, and I like, my whole company mantra is, core value of ours is just one truckload at a time, right? Like, because I know you've been doing this a very long time. I've been doing this a long time. It doesn't matter if you've done something 1,000 times perfectly for them. How are you going to earn that next opportunity? How are you going to perform in that next opportunity? Because everything's tied in there, right? And, I got another podcast that I'm going to be releasing over the next couple of weeks with another friend of mine, large enterprise shipper. And he says that it boils down to 2 things with him: service and communication. But communication will always supersede service in this event. He's like, and he explained this brilliantly. He's like, you can have a bad week. Hell, you can have a bad month when it comes down to it with service, because I understand things happen, but how you communicate in those moments is what gets you that next opportunity. He's like, because things happen. We're all human. We're going to fuck things up every once in a while. But if you don't communicate, if I have to hear from my customer that my truckload is not there, and then I have to call you He's like, that is the fastest way to get out of network. And everything, I mean, this guy has been in charge of some very large operations. He never once mentioned digitization of anything. He never once mentioned anything other than, you got to let us know what's going on. Again, back to the basics in a lot of this stuff. And I think that that's where things need to stay, because you can, again, leveraging technology, but if you don't make those phone calls when you need to make those phone calls, none of that stuff matters. Everything that you sold yourself on up to that, none of that matters anymore.
Yeah, and now is your organization prepared to handle the smaller deals as they come through, right? I see a lot of companies that glass over maybe the smaller deal because it's not the needle mover, right? And they don't spend the effort. They half-ass it, to say a better term.
Yeah.
Average service, average communication. They're not really valuing that new opportunity, which, quite honestly, and you know this from your experience, those small opportunities, when you knock them out of the park, when you show people how you can do your business, those are the ones that quadruple and triple, right? Those are the special opportunities that if you spend the time and energy, those are the staples that you have in the future. But a lot of people will be like, well, if I'm not getting X per week, then that's not a priority. And you watch it from a senior, executive level, account manager level, operational level, prioritization, deprioritize. By the time you get down to the bottom, you're just not really that important. And guess what? Those shippers feel that. So what we try to do is we try to flip that and give a consistent approach to all. So if you're new and you're working with us, like, you can be one of the biggest shippers in the country. You shouldn't feel any different. That's how we act. And that's how we earn a lot of our business from the ground up.
Dude, that right there, what Shannon just said right there, you guys, is probably the single best piece of advice that's been given on this show in a long time. Because it doesn't matter to me, and I'm in the same boat, and we share that same value of it, is it doesn't matter if you move 5 truckloads a month with me or 500 a week with me. You're going to get that exact same level of attention, that exact same level of service, that you're going to know exactly how important you are. And, because again, I think that some people think like, when I get to a certain level, then I will do that. No. If you don't give a shit about a customer that moves 5 truckloads a month, you're not going to care about somebody who moves 500 a week. And why do I say that? Because you think that like you're just going to all of a sudden start applying this stuff. Like, it doesn't just happen. Like, you have to start at day one, $1, and build up from there. And because if you don't, again, if you're looking for shortcuts in the 5 truckload a month one, what do you think you're going to do when there's opportunities every single day? This is how it is.
Yeah. And I think that's the big difference. So I think just being core, getting really core and understanding what value you bring, being easy to do business with, all standard business stuff, and being maniacal about your people and making sure there's a consistent approach across. Because I see a lot of folks be like, well, no, this is how we feel. And you go 2 or 3 rungs down, account managers, carrier advisors, stuff like that. And you just watch it start to break down. So do you have consistency in your ranks that believes in that mission and vision? I think that's something else. And hey, as you get bigger, that's a harder thing to accomplish. But for those of us that worked at larger institutions, it's possible. But you have to be consistent. You have to spend time throughout your org on all of those things to bring it to bear for the shippers and carriers that you service daily.
Yeah, man, I'm training is everything. I think it's the one thing that most organizations overlook. And I would rather spend 90 days training somebody up the right way to prepare them for the next 9 years. So they're successful, because it is a top-down thing, man. And it's like, if your team below you isn't performing at the level that you want as a leader, you got to look yourself in the mirror, hands down. It's that simple. Dude, we got to like sit down and have more time, because these 30-minute ones just go by so quick with you. And there's just a ton of gold out there. So as we're kind of wrapping up here today, man, what outside of, like, again, what you just said there, I think is the greatest piece of advice most people need right now. What's something more people can do right now to get noticed out there in the market?
Yeah, I think one thing that we do is we really empower our team, right? Yeah. I think I've worked at some organizations where, the brand is the brand and they don't really trust their people, which is interesting, right? Because you have your people really representing your company every day, but you also set up the org where you also tell them that you don't trust them to represent your org, right? So It's kind of a weird duality there. So we've really empowered our people to be able to do that at Freightmana, which you've seen, Chris.
Oh yeah, I love
it. Worked out well for us. We have different personalities, different approaches, different passions. And I think when people, two things, when people get a chance to work with us, they get that sense of a feeling of empowerment for our people. And then honestly, on the recruiting front, right? I mean, recruiting will continue to be key, having really good people. And so what are you doing to position your group so that very talented people, which, hey, there's a marketplace now where a lot of people are looking for jobs. Where do they want to go? Where do they want to work? Who do they want to work with? What's the team they believe in? And so we've positioned our company and do our interviews and everything in a way where people can come in and decide whether this is a great place for them. And we've gotten some really good talent over the last few months where other companies are cutting back because of some poor decisions along the way, I'd say. And so that advantage for us is that we get these really talented, experienced folks that are walking through the door, and they're going to help us build our brand for the next 3 to 5 years, which is from an ROI perspective and from watching them grow perspective. Those are really special things that we've done as we look to play the mid to long-term game. Like I told you before, I don't really care too much about the short term and what that means. So.
Dude, I'm right there with you. And that's perfect, man. That's exactly what you guys embody as an organization. That's why I love you guys over there is you guys are who you are, and that's it. You guys tunnel vision, and you're going to keep doing you. And it's something that I try and embody in my own companies is it's like there's a lot of outside noise. I just got to focus on me, my priorities, my tasks, and that's it. It doesn't matter if it, again, back to like the content, you guys, that I talk about all the time that I create. I don't care if it gets 1 like or 10,000 likes, as long as it benefits one person out there. That's what my mission is, man. I don't care about the vanity metrics. I'm going to keep showing up every single day. And yeah, but dude, that's it. Shannon, thank you so much for joining me today. And you guys, we will be back tomorrow every single day, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central. As always, if you guys saw value in this, subscribe and share that show. Rank that show, you guys. That's how we are the top transportation podcast, is because of each and every one of you. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.